Prima with support. I'm gonna do a video of my foiling quiver, everything, boards, front foils, tails, masts, fuses, wings, everything. The reason why I want to do this is that for the first time I feel like I have a very good foil for every one of the 4 disciplines that I do in order of personal preference. Foil drive assisted subfoiling on breaking waves, foil drive assisted subfoiling downwinders, wing foiling downwinders, wing foiling on breaking waves. I started foiling 6 years ago in Maui like everybody else on Go Foil gear because that was the first one available. And after that I changed to Armstrong. I had a brief flirting with Axis and now I am on F1. And in the meantime I did jump on a bunch of other brands, not that I tested deeply, but at least half of the brands out there I had a go. And that is to say that the search for what really fits you and your preferences is pretty much never ending. And that's why I want to seal this moment in time, because as I was saying, it's the first time I think I got kind of everything figured out, but I know it's not gonna last. So it's gonna be fun to watch this video in 4 years and see what I'm riding then. I'm gonna divide it in sections. I'm gonna start from the boards. So 6 years ago, of course, there were no foil drive and I was subfoiling like everybody else, just using the paddle. Because of my bad fingers that are still there, I started using the foil drive assist, and I tell you what, I do not subfoil without it anymore. Even if my fingers were healed, the product is so good and I got it tuned so good onto my gear that I pretty much don't subfoil without it anymore. So that is the board that I use for subfoiling. They both, that's the subfoiling and that's the wing foiling board. I finally decided which one is better for which. They're both made by Andres Martinez at Maui Resin Designs. That one I actually bought it the way it is. It was already shaped. This one was shaped, we designed it together on a computer. And the dimensions of the two boards are, the wing boards are slightly bigger, 5 feet 26.5, 90 liters, and these subfoiling boards, I'm gonna call it, is 410, 25, 85 liters. Why I like my boards so big is also because I love foot strips. I hate foiling without at least the front foot strip, and when I ride my prone board, which is 35 liters, I can't really use foot strips and my foiling sucks. So I'm just really used to foot strips. They could be interchangeable, they both can do either one, but the reason why I settled on the slightly bigger and especially wider one for winging is that because in very light wind, that is easier to take off. There is at the moment a little bit of a belief that in order to take off with light wind, you need to have a Barracuda style board, narrow and long. That is true, but what it's not true is that short and wide doesn't work for light wind. Barracuda boards are displaced in the water and they have those shapes. This is instead a flat rocker and sharp release at the tail. It's a planing hull, and so the wider it is, the easier it gets on the plane. Look at the windsurfing formula boards, for example. Those things can plane in almost no wind. So this one planes on top, gets on the plane earlier than the smaller one that is sitting down in the board a little more. A key factor in this is that my weight is 70 kilos. They're both plenty positive volume for me, and the fact that I use wings that pump really well. This is the configuration of the deck for subfoiling downwinders. That means that the front foot will go into this foot strap. I use no back foot strap and my back foot will move in this area. As you can see, I have 3 of these NSI Spectra loops so that I can have 2 positions for the battery box, and this is the position that allows me to do subfoiling downwinder with enough room with the back foot to move over here also when I bump, and then when I want to carve a tight turn I can move it a little more back. Having the battery box in between your feet is absolutely key in my opinion, because It's not on the tail, it's not on the front, it doesn't contribute to added swing weight at either one of the ends. It just stays right on top of the fulcrum. So this is the subfoiling setup instead. I have 2 foot straps. I actually moved this one back 1 hole, I'll tell you later why, and I add the back foot strap because when I carve I really like to have both foot straps. I also moved the battery box in this other more backwards position because sometimes I sit on the board and I 35% my way out to the waves. I don't like the e-foil style, it's too noisy and they catch too many waves in my opinion. And also when I get to the waves sometimes I want to stand parallel feet like this, and I still can if I move the box back. If the box was here I wouldn't be able to do that. I wouldn't be able to sit on the board. So as far as battery box position, this will be better because it's right more in the middle of your feet, but this is a compromise that works the best for subfoiling on waves with my style. So why do I force myself to move that foot strap back 1 hole when I do subfoiling? Because like this I feel more drive in the turn. I have a little more weight because there's a 1 inch more of board in front and the pitch is also more stable in the turns. Conversely, when I'm subfoiling I want to move the whole thing more forward because I want to have less swing weight for easier pumping. This is my good old trusty, a little beat up wingfoil board instead. I always have those 2 foot strap like that. You can see I had to move to add stick-on insert still from NSI because again this is what was not made custom for me. The other thing very important to add is that both boards weigh around 10 pounds. This one's slightly less, this one's slightly more. But why is that important? Because they need to be light, otherwise it's hard to take off. That's pretty kind of fundamental, kind of basic. Let's move on to the foils. It's all F1 gear. So Raphael, you should be pleased if you're watching this. Where do we start? Subfoiling on waves. That is the only one in which I actually like to have 2 sizes. I have the Phantom S 740 here and the 840 there. And of course smaller waves, let's say waist high, I can handle the 840, particularly if I put it with the 195 surf tail. If it's if it's chest high, I can actually use either the 840 with the 160 carving monoblock tail or the 740 with the 195 tail. Unfortunately, I don't own yet a monoblock 180. Shoulder iron or head iron more, then I go 740 Phantom S with the 160 carbine, and that is phenomenal. Really hard carbs. I lately compared the 740 to the Skate 650 there and to the Eagle 690 there on carving waves, but I am not as good as Mr. Bennett's, I can say. That's pretty much a fact. And also I don't care about pumping back to the wave behind. That's something I should have said at the beginning. My subfoiling on waves, I cannot care less about pumping back, because in order to pump back you need a higher aspect foil, and that compromises the carving. So all I care is the carving, and a Phantom will have a 6.5 aspect ratio, which goes on the roll a lot easier, also thanks to the shape which is more curved, than a 8 from the Skate or a 9.5 aspect ratio for the Eagle. The aspect ratio is pretty simple. The shorter it is, the easier it is to put it on the roll. The higher it is, the harder it is to turn it on the roll, but the more pumping and gliding you can have out of a foil, and that's why both my downwinding foils are Eagle. Let's jump into downwinding. So subfoiling, downwinding, assisted by the foil drive. I have the A90 Eagle with a monoblock downwind 190 tail, which I chopped to the width of 14 inches. It was, forget, 16, I forget what it was, but it was too big for the Maui conditions. Don't forget, we have really good conditions here. For the wing downwinders, I use the 690 and another 160 monoblock. I have 2 of those. And for winging on waves, I use the Skate 650 with the monoblock 160 also. I could use the 740 on the waves, but it happens that there's a little extra speed on the waves when you go with the wing compared when you go without. and so sometimes it feels like I overpower the foil. It tends to come up a little too much. So the Skate 650, it's a beauty because it's got the right amount of lift and speed and everything. I also tried a 550 before that, and he ended up being a little too slow. Okay, masts are all carbon. We're gonna start from the old 75, which unfortunately only has 40% HM carbon, and as such is a bit flexible. I still prefer it in the subfoiling downwinders with the 890, because I don't do crazy hard carves on a downwinder, and having a thinner profile that has less drag is key. But I also have an alternative of this says 78, but this is a custom cut 75 no limits V2. So this one, as I said, on a downwinder it feels like it's got a little more drag because the profile is maybe slightly thicker, but it's way stiffer. And so when I am subfoiling on waves and I need a 75 because it's low tide, this holds the turn and gives more control, and so I prefer that one, or at least I preferred it until I just recently bought the new 80 centimeter. All the new carbon masts from F1, the 14 millimeter, have 95% HM carbon. It's not written on that, I know, because I messaged the guy who designed them. The old 85, which I have here, has 90% HM carbon. So this, it is stiffer than the 75, might still not be quite as stiff at the low limits, but it's got the same thin profile, so it gives me extra speed. And plus it's hard to compare 75 to 80 because there's 5 centimeters difference, and this allows me to bury the foil in the water with more reliability, knowing that the tip won't come out and that I won't, or the rail of the board won't touch the water. So it's an unfair comparison, but I do like the 80 better. The 85, as I didn't say, but I use it for wing foiling, both downwinders and on the waves, just because when you wing foil you have a little extra length. That is an advantage no matter how flexible or not the mast is. But this is decent as far as flex, at least for my lightweight and small waves that I use when I wing. Well, the wing chapter is pretty short because I only use Strike V1s. In my opinion, the improvements they made with V2 and V3 are all on the high-end spectrum, and all I care is the low end, is the pumping. It's priority number one. And the second thing is how stable they are when you luff it, and they are very stable. Not that the V3 is super stable too, but the pumping of the V1, in my opinion, is superior. I have 2.8, I lost the bag, they stole my bag, a 3.5 and a 4.2, and that covers all the winds I care about winging here in Maui.